Hare Krishna, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you to many of you who continue to tune into the Hare Krishna Project page to hear about news from around the UK and different publications and different podcasts. It's great to have you all tuning on a regular basis. Today I want to talk a bit about ISKCON and the Church of Scientology. Unlikely bedfellows, ? I think as someone with an interest in sociology and the study of religion, I'm always keen to think about and look at how do people perceive the Hare Krishnas. And in particular, I'm talking about ISKCON, which is the biggest Hare Krishna group certainly in the UK and probably the world as well. The biggest Gaudiya Vaishnava organisation. How do people perceive ISKCON? I was talking with a friend. I talk with a lot of friends on a regular basis about their perception or their understanding of things. I've got one friend, probably my longest friend ever. She's a devout atheist, not interested in religion, thinks I'm crazy for joining the Hare Krishnas. And I was talking to her yesterday privately about some of the things I've experienced in ISKCON over the years, which I may share with you one day. And I shared these things with her privately about my experiences in ISKCON, particularly over the last year. And she said, "Oh my goodness, that sounds like the Church of Scientology." And I thought, wow, it does. It does sound like the Church of Scientology. The Church of Scientology has this kind of world reputation for being a bit weird, for being a bit odd. Most people will accept that the Church of Scientology is up there in terms of kind of cult-like behaviour, cult-like activity. For anyone watching or listening who's unfamiliar with the Church of Scientology, the first thing to really point out is the Church of Scientology is in no way linked with Christianity. It uses the term church, but it's not any way linked from Christianity. It's not a Christian sect. It didn't come from the Christian church in any way. The Church of Scientology was founded in 1953 by a man called L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was an author. He was a sci-fi fan. He was a sci-fi geek, basically, and he was fascinated with science fiction. And he basically, he wanted to create a religious organization or a religious group that was founded on the principles of science fiction understanding. In terms of the beliefs of Scientology, they're not really known much about. There's this understanding there's different levels of spiritual life called operating thetons, and you have to pay to go up each level of operating theton, and it's like £100,000 per level. And finally, when you get to the top and you've been stripped of all your cash, you've kind of lost £1 million or something, and you know about the truths of Scientology. In a minute, I'm actually going to come on to the principal belief of Scientology, which is actually very similar to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. But ISKCON and the Church of Scientology, unlikely bedfellows. I've been of the view for a very long time that in most religious organizations, we should be looking at elections rather than selections. David Miscavige, the chairman of the Church of Scientology board, is not elected. He is selected. And that's also certainly how, not always, but how leaders in ISKCON, particularly temple presidents in ISKCON, are appointed. They're not elected, they're selected. I'm not of the view that if you're a Swami or a sannyasi, you should be elected. Yes, you're appointed by God, you're chosen by Krishna to have your particular role. I'm talking about managerial positions in ISKCON. The managerial positions in ISKCON should be elected. The membership of ISKCON broadly should elect or vote for those people, particularly when those people have salaries of £59,000, almost the same as an MP in the UK. So what do ISKCON and the Church of Scientology have in common? Well, they promote selection rather than election. Also, there's this idea about people that are outside of the organisation or people that are outside of the philosophy. There's this term that people use in ISKCON, I've not heard it in other mats, called Mayavadi. So Mayavadi is someone who might be following a Mayavadi philosophy. Karmi is another term. I don't like the word karmi. It's about people that are not followers of Krishna, and they're seen as people that are outside the group or outside the collection of devotees. So Karmi or Mayavadi. In the Church of Scientology, they have a similar term called suppressive person. So a suppressive person is someone who is suppressive, someone who's not a follower of the Church of Scientology, someone who doesn't follow the philosophy or the belief system of the Church of Scientology. So another similarity there is Mayavadi or Karmi on the ISKCON side, and on the Church of Scientology side, you've got a suppressive person. I've been thinking a lot about religious groups recently, sociologically, and how directly or indirectly, voluntarily or involuntarily, there is this idea of controlling behavior. How do we control the behavior of our members? Scientology worldwide is known to be the group, or one of the groups, that absolutely controls the behavior of its members. And there's been documentaries about it. Many of you might have seen it a few years ago. There was a very famous documentary about 10 years ago, and I've forgotten the name of the British journalist, but he was very brave. He went to America and really went kind of in search of the dodgy stuff in the Church of Scientology. A couple of years ago, Leah Remini, who's a very good actress, she was in King of Queens many years ago. She was a Scientologist. She left the Church of Scientology, and she produced a documentary called I think Scientology in the Aftermath. It was on Quest Red, one of the free channels on Sky or Freeview, and I loved it. I watched it. It was very, very interesting to watch. And she talked about how Scientology likes to control people's behavior. And in one sense, in any religious organization, this is not just me kind of choosing ISKCON as an example, in any organization, there is this desire to control the behavior of its members. Now, if you're part of a religious organization, I completely accept you should be behaving in the way that organization wants you to behave. But ultimately, we shouldn't prioritize necessarily conformity over acceptance. I was chatting to a Church of England minister a couple of years ago. He's seen a lot of growth in his church over the last 5-6 years. And I said, you know, how do you do, what are you doing to achieve that or to do that? And he basically said, firstly, we're just accepting people for who they are and where they're from. Because we recognize God loves them. We accept them as God loves them. That's the number one thing. And secondly, when they start to spend time with us, hopefully they'll start to behave in a way that is fitting of the church. But ultimately, behavioural standards are not first. It's accepting people for who they are and where they're from. There is one big difference, though. I don't want you to think that I'm using ISKCON as an example to say that it's like the Church of Scientology. There's one big difference between the two. One is this concept of excommunication. So in the Church of Scientology, and the Jehovah's Witnesses practice this as well, there is this concept of excommunication. Now, if I was, so I'm a devotee, I'm a member of ISKCON. If I was to leave ISKCON and I'd kind of, you know, fallen out with the organisation, and let's say my family were devotees in ISKCON, it would then be banned, I would be banned from talking to my family, and they would be banned from talking to me. That's the concept and the practice of excommunication. And the Jehovah's Witnesses and other groups, I'm not sure about the Mormons, but the Jehovah's Witnesses also practice that as well, this idea of excommunication. If you've left an organization, kind of under a bad light or under a dark cloud, you're not allowed to communicate with your family or your friends inside the organization. Well, ISKCON, thankfully, doesn't practice excommunication, and I, like many of you watching, would be hopefully certainly against that. This suppression of people or banning of people, trying to ban people's behavior is not acceptable. So, ISKCON and the Church of Scientology, unlikely bedfellows? Well, hopefully not. There are similarities between the two organizations, and ISKCON really needs to look at how the world perceives it to be, in order so the world doesn't perceive us to be like the Church of Scientology. There is one crucial thing, actually, that both organizations have in common in a positive way. I want people to take something positive away from this update that I'm giving, this little talk that I'm giving to you. I remember one guy, he was the spokesperson for the Church of Scientology. He was on an American TV show about 2 years ago. And he was being very nice and very friendly, and, you know, he had a smart tie and slick hair. Mine's a bit messy today. And the woman just said to him, look, what do Scientologists actually believe? What is the central teaching of Scientology? And he just said basically, we're not the body, we're eternal spiritual beings. And I was like, wow, that's the essence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are not this body, we are eternal spiritual beings. So, ISKCON and the Church of Scientology, unlikely bedfellows? Hopefully not. Hare Krishna.